cheated while I was working double shifts. So I made sure her wedding was canceled at the altar. The text came in at 3:47 a.m. while I was restocking shelves at the warehouse, my second job of the day. Can't do this anymore. Found someone else. Wedding's off. Sorry, Jake. I stared at my phone screen in the fluorescent lighting of the storage facility, reading those words over and over until they burned into my retinas. 3 years of my life. 3 years of 16-hour workdays. 3 years of saving every penny for our future. Gone in a text message that took her probably 30 seconds to type. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 31 years old, and I had just discovered that while I was killing myself to build our dream life, my fiancée Sarah had been building a life with someone else. I sat down on a stack of boxes, still holding my phone, trying to process what had just happened. We were supposed to get married in 6 weeks. The venue was booked, the invitation sent, the flowers ordered. I had worked myself to exhaustion for months to pay for everything she wanted: the designer dress, the upscale reception, the honeymoon in Bali. The warehouse was quiet except for the hum of the overhead lights. I was alone with 200,000 square feet of inventory, and the crushing realization that the woman I loved had just destroyed my world via text message. Not even a phone call. Not even the courtesy of a face-to-face conversation. I tried calling her immediately, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. She had blocked me. The next morning, after finishing my warehouse shift, I drove straight to our apartment in downtown Portland. My key still worked, but the place felt different the moment I walked in. Emptier. Half of her clothes were gone from the closet. Her jewelry box was missing from the dresser. The framed photos of us had been removed from the walls, leaving behind pale rectangles on the paint. But she was still there, standing in the kitchen making coffee like it was any other morning. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before: relief. She was relieved that I knew. "Jake," she said quietly, not moving from where she stood. "I was hoping you'd get my message." 3 years, Sarah," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. 3 years, and you end it with a text message? She set down her coffee mug and crossed her arms. I didn't know how else to do it. This has been building for a while. How long? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. 6 months, she said, not meeting my eyes. Maybe longer. Jake, you're never here. You're always working. When's the last time we had dinner together? When's the last time we actually talked? I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and sharp. I was working for us, for our future, for this wedding that you planned and insisted on having at the Rivermark Country Club because it was your dream venue. I didn't ask you to work yourself to death, she said, her voice getting defensive. I didn't ask you to take on 2 jobs. You asked for a $40,000 wedding, I shot back. You asked for a dress that cost more than most people's cars. You asked for a honeymoon that would wipe out our savings. How did you think I was going to pay for all that on a teacher's salary? She was quiet for a moment, and I could see the guilt flickering across her face. But then she straightened up, and her expression hardened. His name is Marcus, she said, like she was ripping off a Band-Aid. He's a financial advisor. He can give me the life I want without having to work 3 jobs to afford it. The words hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't just cheated on me, she had traded up. Found someone with more money, more status, more time to give her attention. I was just the placeholder until something better came along. Does he know about the wedding? I asked. We're going to reschedule, she said. Use the same venue, same date. Most of the deposits are non-refundable anyway. And there it was, the final insult. She wasn't just leaving me for another man, she was going to marry him using the wedding I had paid for. The venue I had worked overtime to afford, the flowers I had chosen, the menu I had tasted and approved. I left the apartment that day taking only my clothes and personal items. I didn't fight for anything else. I was too stunned, too hurt, too exhausted from months of grinding work to think clearly about what came next. But as I sat in my empty studio apartment that night, eating takeout Chinese food and staring at the stack of wedding invoices on my coffee table, something began to crystallize in my mind. Sarah thought she could just step into my wedding with her new man like I had never existed. She thought there would be no consequences for her betrayal, no accountability for the pain she had caused. She was wrong. I spent the next 3 days making phone calls. As the person who had signed all the contracts and paid all the deposits, I had certain rights. The wedding planner, Janet Mills, was sympathetic when I explained the situation. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she said. "This must be devastating, but you should know that legally, since you're the one who signed the contracts and made the payments, you have the right to cancel everything." "What about the deposits?" I asked. "Most are non-refundable, but there are some exceptions. The catering can be canceled up to 2 weeks before the event with only a 50% penalty. The flowers can be canceled with 48 hours notice. The band has a clause about canceled weddings. They keep the deposit but don't charge the balance." I did the math in my head. I would lose about $15,000 in non-refundable deposits, but I could save another $25,000 by canceling everything else. More importantly, I could make sure that Sarah's new wedding didn't happen on my dime. "I want to cancel everything," I said, "but I don't want Sarah to know until the day of the wedding." Janet was quiet for a moment. "Jake, I understand you're hurt, but are you sure about this? It's going to be very public and very embarrassing for everyone involved. She cheated on me for 6 months while I was working double shifts to pay for her dream wedding," I said. "She's planning to marry someone else using my money. I think a little embarrassment is the least she deserves." Janet sighed. "All right, I'll start making the calls, but Jake, once I do this, there's no going back." "I know," I said. "Do it." Over the next week, I systematically canceled every vendor while specifically requesting that they not contact Sarah directly. Since I was the primary contact and the one who had paid the deposits, most were willing to accommodate this request. The catering was canceled. The flowers were canceled. The band was canceled. The photographer was canceled. The only thing I couldn't touch was the venue itself. That deposit was completely non-refundable, and they had a policy of honoring bookings even in cases of relationship breakdowns. But without catering, flowers, music, or photography, the venue would just be an empty room. I also did something else during that week. I reached out to several people who were supposed to attend the wedding, our mutual friends, some of Sarah's coworkers, even a few of her family members who I had gotten close to over the years. I didn't tell them about the cancellations, but I did tell them about the cheating. The reaction was exactly what I expected. Most people were shocked and disgusted by Sarah's behavior. Her cousin Michelle, who was supposed to be a bridesmaid, was particularly angry. "I can't believe she would do this to you," Michelle said when I called her. "After everything you've done for her, all the work you've put in, and the way she did it with a text message? That's just cruel." "I wanted you to hear it from me," I said. "I know you're supposed to be in the wedding, and I didn't want you to be blindsided. Jake, I'm not standing up for her after this. I'm not even sure I want to attend whatever wedding she's planning now." Similar conversations happened throughout the week. By the time the wedding day arrived, Sarah had lost half her wedding party and about 60% of her guests. Word had spread through our social circle, and most people were taking sides, and they weren't taking hers. The morning of what was supposed to be our wedding, I woke up in my apartment feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: anticipation. Not the good kind I had been feeling about my wedding day, but the dark satisfaction of knowing that justice was about to be served. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from people who were supposed to attend the wedding. Apparently, word was starting to get out that something was wrong. At 11 a.m., 2 hours before the ceremony was supposed to start, Janet called me. "Jake, I'm at the venue with Sarah and her new fiancé. They're asking where all the vendors are. I think it's time to tell them what happened." "Put me on speaker," I said. I heard the phone being moved, and then Sarah's voice tight with panic. Jake, what's going on? The florist isn't here, the caterers aren't answering their phones, and the band just told us they're not coming." "Hello, Sarah," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I canceled everything." The silence that followed was deafening. Then I heard Marcus's voice for the first time. "What do you mean you canceled everything?" "I mean I canceled the catering, the flowers, the music, and the photography," I said. "You know, all the things I paid for while you were sleeping with my replacement." "You can't do that!" Sarah's voice was rising toward hysteria. "We have 150 people coming. My family flew in from out of state." "Actually, I can do that," I said. "I'm the one who signed the contracts. I'm the one who paid the deposits. And I'm the one who decided I wasn't going to subsidize your new relationship." I could hear Sarah crying now, and Marcus trying to take control of the situation. "This is insane," he was saying. "We'll sue you for this." "For what?" I asked. "For canceling my own wedding? For refusing to pay for your celebration? Good luck with that." Janet's voice came back on the line. "Jake, I'm going to hang up now, but I want you to know that in 20 years of wedding planning, I've never seen anything like this." "In 20 years of wedding planning," I said, "how many grooms have you seen work themselves to exhaustion to pay for a wedding, only to find out their bride was cheating on them for half the engagement?" "Point taken," Janet said, and the line went dead. I sat in my apartment for the rest of the day, monitoring social media and fielding calls from friends and family. The news of the canceled wedding spread quickly through our social circle. Photos started appearing on Instagram and Facebook, pictures of confused guests arriving at the venue, only to find empty rooms and no celebration. The story that emerged was even more satisfying than I had hoped. Sarah and Marcus had tried to salvage something from the day, but without any vendors, there was nothing to salvage. They had stood in an empty ballroom with about 40 remaining guests, down from the original 150, trying to explain what had happened. According to Michelle, who had decided to show up just to witness the chaos, Sarah had completely broken down. She spent most of the afternoon crying in the bridal suite while Marcus tried to manage the logistics of disappointed guests and angry family members. The best part was the reaction from Sarah's family. Her father, who had never particularly liked me but had always been polite, apparently cornered her in the hotel lobby and demanded to know how she could have been so careless with someone who had loved her so much. Her mother, who had been planning this wedding for months, was furious about the wasted time and embarrassment. But it was her grandmother's reaction that I found most satisfying. Sarah's grandmother, a 92-year-old woman who had flown in from Arizona for the wedding, apparently looked at Sarah and said, "Honey, you made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. And you're lying in it alone." The social media fallout continued for days. People were sharing their opinions, taking sides, and generally treating the whole situation like a real-life soap opera. The consensus seemed to be that while my methods were extreme, Sarah's behavior had been inexcusable. Marcus, I learned through mutual friends, was having second thoughts about the whole relationship. Apparently, the reality of being with someone who could cheat on their fiancé and handle the breakup so callously was making him question his choices. The fairy tale romance he thought he was getting was starting to look more like a cautionary tale. 2 weeks after the non-wedding, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered it. "Jake, it's Sarah. Please don't hang up." I almost did hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I want to apologize," she said, her voice small and defeated. "What I did was wrong. The way I did it was wrong. I hurt you, and I embarrassed myself and my family, and I'm sorry." "Okay," I said, not giving her anything else. "I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but what you did canceling everything like that, it was cruel, Jake. It was vindictive." And there it was. Even in her apology, She was trying to make me the villain. "You know what was cruel, Sarah," I said, feeling the anger return. "Cheating on me for 6 months while I worked myself to death to pay for your dream wedding. You know what was vindictive? Planning to marry someone else using my money, in the venue I booked, with the flowers I chose." "I never meant for it to happen this way," she said. "But it did happen this way," I replied. "You made choices and I made choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to leave me for someone with more money. I chose not to pay for your new boyfriend's wedding. I think that's fair." She was crying again. "My family won't speak to me. Marcus is having doubts about everything. I've lost most of my friends. I don't know what to do." "Figure it out," I said. "You're good at making new plans." I hung up and blocked her number. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Portland, reading a book and enjoying my first real day off in over a year. I had quit my second job and was back to working normal hours as a high school history teacher. The money I had saved from canceling the wedding vendors had allowed me to pay off my credit cards and build up a decent emergency fund. I was happier than I had been in years. The weight of Sarah's expectations, her constant demands for a lifestyle I couldn't afford, was gone. I was dating again, nothing serious, just enjoying the company of women who appreciated simple pleasures and honest work. That's when I saw the announcement in the local newspaper's wedding section. Sarah and Marcus had finally gotten married, a small ceremony at a budget venue with about 30 guests. The photo showed them cutting a sheet cake in what looked like a church fellowship hall. It was a far cry from the elaborate celebration she had originally demanded. I felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. The truth was, I had moved on. The revenge had been satisfying at the time, but it wasn't what had healed me. What had healed me was realizing that I deserved better than someone who would treat me the way Sarah had treated me. I closed the newspaper and went back to my book, thinking about the woman I had dinner with the night before, a fellow teacher who had laughed at my jokes, insisted on splitting the check, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts about everything from education policy to the best hiking trails in Oregon. Sarah had taught me a valuable lesson about love and loyalty, just not the one she intended. She had shown me what conditional love looked like, love that depended on what I could provide, how much I could spend, how well I could perform as a provider. The revenge I had taken wasn't really about humiliating her, though that had been a bonus. It was about refusing to accept that treatment and standing up for my own worth. Standing in that coffee shop, successful and content, and surrounded by the possibility of real love with someone who would value me for who I was, rather than what I could buy them, I realized that Sarah's betrayal had been the best thing that could have happened to me. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply living well, and I was finally ready to do exactly that.